Welcome to Coached Soul, a podcast for a better you. Your host, Steve Hudgens, is a licensed professional counselor, and your co-host, Julia Canton, is a therapeutic coach. Together, they discuss various topics, providing a different perspective on life and insight that you are not alone. On a non-emergency basis, you may contact them at area code 918-280-8690 or coachsoul.com to provide them with new topics, feedback, or to request an appearance on the show. And now, here's your host, Steve Hudgens.
Welcome back to the show. As always, Julia, you just told me you always like to sit and look pretty. And what a great segue to talk about gender roles.
Oh my gosh, Steve. Yeah, talk about a topic that can cause some mixed emotions for some.
Well, and I'm sure we're going to hit some hot topics here, and I know we'll probably get some hate literature going on. But here's the thing that I like for us to say is that we have moved away from being able to be open in our discussions, no matter how hard the discussion can be. And we always, not always, I would say a lot of us seem to be project our fears onto the other person, or we don't want to be objective about the topic. Well, you're wrong and you're wrong, so who's right? I discuss this with, especially with parents and in therapy with adolescents, and they argue. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's look at something different here. You may believe the moon is made out of cheese. You may believe the moon's made out of a rock. The question is, have you both been to the moon? No. So how come we're arguing over what the moon is made of if we've never been? But can we agree on experiences here? Can we agree that the moon rises during the day at night sometimes, depending on on how the Earth is placed? Can we agree that the shape of the moon is different based upon how the sun casts the Earth's shadow onto the moon? Can we agree that the moon takes on different colors depending on the atmospheric conditions or if there's an eclipse? There is so much more that we can agree on upon our experiences than to sit here and argue over something that we never have been. What do you think?
I think that what we're looking at right now, and I love that example because when we hit some of these more what we consider quote unquote sensitive topics, that we are approaching it, you and I, from a perspective that even if it may be a male's opinion or a female's opinion, since we are talking about gender roles today, that we may have some things that we disagree on. However, our ability to communicate the fact that we have respect for each other's opinions, even if we disagree with it, that we're open to the dialogue, even the argument, okay? Each of us can present an argument for our individual views, but that doesn't have to mean that we are deleting or negating the fact that your opinion is as valuable as mine, or mine as valuable as yours. And so I love these topics, and I just really love that example, because where we're approaching these topics is that we will find more things that we probably agree on than what we disagree on. And I will take that any day. So let's get into it.
And it's interesting because I want to talk about, the idea of being able to have open communication. And I like how you expressed as respect. But here's where I think about respect. If a man respects himself, he doesn't need to command respect. When he commands respect, he loses respect for himself. And when I think about that, I need to have respect for myself. And when I do, I'm able to have respect for you as well. And it comes down to a liking of who we are as people. And what is the cause of an argument? Is it because we don't want to change? Is it because we don't like the idea that we may have to conform? The idea of freedom of thought should be expressed. That's how we grow. If we could take, I've got a client who is a agnostic and a Democrat. I'm a libertarian and faith-based, but we have the best communication of learning from one another. That I've tried to, he wants to continue doing therapy regardless. He says, I learned so much from you, and I learned from him as well. Even though we have differences, we still respect each other because we respect ourselves. And when it comes down to the gender roles, you and I are leading up to several podcasts that are going to be leading up into female versus male, because when we think about families that come together, whether it's the straight couple or the gay couple or whatever, is how do we deal and identify what is our role? And I think there's a lack of emotional boundary that comes into place, that becomes blurred lines when it comes to role aspects. What do you think about that as far as blurred lines here?
Well, first of all, I want to back up before we get into the blurred lines.
Sure.
Because I'm not sure that I agree or disagree on that one at the moment, but just we're going to back up because from what I just heard you say, I got the feeling that, and correct me if I'm wrong, and that's what I love about our podcast, is that we can have some of these dialogues. From my perspective, an argument is not a bad thing. An argument is simply a dialogue, a discourse, a discussion where we both present our perceived or researched facts, okay, of where we stand on any given subject. So for the purpose of this podcast, I would like to present the idea that when I use the word argument, I'm not talking about the bickering, fighting, closed down viewpoints that are pitching people against each other. I am literally using the word argument as a presentation of one view in place of another, with an open heart, open space that we can agree to disagree, and it's not going to have any impact on our relationship. Can we agree on that first, just so our audience is clear?
That's just you and I. That is our personality, right? We're able to come to some type of discussion, whether it leads to an argument. I know argument comes across as a derogatory term, that you and I got some boxing gloves going on and we're going at it in our ring, right? And it's not that. It is the fact that you and I can have a challenging dialogue that moves you or moves me to a higher place of thinking, because we gain knowledge from each other.
Correct.
And that's where I think that the whole purpose that we have this podcast is to do that, is to give you a male and female perspective.
Yes.
To be able to make a choice for yourself, as meaning the audience, to determine what is good and healthy. Now, there are a lot of times that Julia and I can be wrong. Imagine that. But we're human beings.
He's a male, guys. He can. It's only the men that are wrong. I mean, isn't that part of the perspective of society today? Women are right, men are wrong.
Well, here's the funny thing about that. I have dated a gal.
Blurred lines.
Okay, but I got a coffee cup that says always Mr. Right on it, and that was given to me by a girlfriend. And it's funny because it was a joke between us, because she would bring up something and I would come back with an argument, and she would say, yeah, you're right. But I'm not right all the time. Okay. I'm just trying to make that clear. I'm not right all the time.
Nor am I. So it's okay.
Exactly. But it's great to have fun and looking at how we can have fun. And I think that is imperative when it comes to discussions, to keep the discussion lighthearted.
Yes.
Because we could get so focused. So typically, I wish that our audience can see, because what I typically do sometimes, I coach businessmen on how to be better managers. That's a different from my practice of therapy. So I do coaching on the side of how to be an effective manager. And what I've done in the past is I use pens, 4 or 5 different pens, and I organize them in such a way that may or may not look like a number. And I place them down on the table and I ask them, what number do you see? And they say, oh, I see a 2. What they don't realize, on the background, my hand, which is near the pens, may show a number 3 on my hand. We typically focus on just the pens. Then I change them again. What number do you see? Oh, I see a 4. Well, my hand is showing a 2. So my fingers change when my pens change, to illustrate that we focus so much on the problem that we don't look at what's causing the problem on the outside. And when we begin into our discussions, Julia, it's that we're looking from all perspectives, or try to look at all perspectives. And we may not have all the information.
Correct. Well, and there is a lot of and I would like to take a stance on this. There is new research that just came out that actually supports the fact that how we feel or believe, or whatever research is done today, does not impact how we're going to feel, what research will be done, or the outcome of something that's happened 20 years from now, that will happen 20 years from now. And so my point in bringing that up is that we're leaving space. Over time, we naturally grow and develop into new perspectives because we gain new experiences in our relationships, in our life, personally, professionally. And it inherently leads to change and dialogue and shared experiences. And that means different perspectives will occur. And so with all of that being said, Steve, I think that today's subject, since we are starting the discussion of gender roles, is on that. You asked me a question on blurred lines. And here's the thing about blurred lines, is that I think that we have entered, and it isn't a beginning. This has been going on for a while, where there is what I truly believe was a full attack on men to begin with. Okay, husbands, fathers, men, just the roles, protector, provider, within society. And now we're at a place to where we're wanting to also remove the gender role of the mother, the wife, the daughter, and everything is just becoming this almost this unisex vibe, instead of us standing in our spaces as men and women, male and female. And you brought this up earlier, and I would like to, you and I, in our private discussion before we started this podcast, is that we do know, and this is most species across the board, okay, have a male and female, the chromosomes there. It exists. There is a reason why there is this male and female role, okay, and each are so valuable to the ecosystem. You can't have one that exists without the other. But is gender necessarily what we're talking about when we say gender roles?
Great point. No, great point. And it's funny because before we were doing this podcast, I was looking up, I just put Google on gender roles. And it's interesting how Google assigned how they come up. And the first one was by ccp.jhu.edu, pops up gender norms, positive or negative, impact all aspects. Harmful and outdated gender norms can have serious consequences. I'm like, what? And then it goes into other organizations. And then this really interesting popped up. What are gender roles? Gender roles in society means how we're expected to act, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves based upon our assigned sex. For example, girls and women are generally expected to dress in typically feminine ways and be polite, accommodating, and nurturing. Oh, hold on. Where's the men? Are we not classified as, oh my gosh, we're the domestic violence men that we hit and beat women and suppress them? I mean, oh my gosh, there's nothing mentioned about men and the gender roles. It just seems to be about women. And then all of a sudden, I pop up and there is this SaveTheChildren.org saying that gender roles can create a lifelong cycle of inequality. So you make a valid point, and it does seem like we're trying to get rid of men, and then all of a sudden we're trying to get rid of women too, and have this unisex. Well, you okay? Take this in nature. What happens if you two get two elk that have become women all of a sudden? They're not bucks anymore. Mm-hmm. What do? It doesn't help set an order that's there that balances life. And you and I know that, you know, when we think about even in relationships, somebody has a pecking order. It is just basic science research, psychology 101, sociology, clinical social workers. They realize, what is a pecking order? You put a bunch of hens together, not calling women hens, but you put a bunch of women together that cackle. And so it's like they have a pecking order, right? And so women have pecking orders, men have pecking orders. So is it basically really gender, or is it the type of character that we need to be discussing? What do you think?
I think that here's I think it's both.
Okay.
There is, and I am always going to speak from my perspective, and so I'd like our listeners to know that they can decide what they want to do with their lives. Me, as having at 51 years old, having some of the life experiences that I've had, okay, I've had the toxic masculinity where, and I knew not just toxic, abusive masculinity where, you know, growing up, and first husband was just everything was by his rules only. I mean, it was domestic violence at the core. Okay. If I rolled my eyes, if I didn't fold a washcloth a certain way, if food wasn't prepped a certain way, there were physical, emotional, mental consequences for that. Okay. Fast forward, my children's dad, who's also passed away, our marriage was one of unity, but I understood, not because I was forced to, but because I wanted to have him in this beautiful masculine role of head of the household, because what it did is freed me up to have this glorious and beautiful role as mother, nurturer, caregiver, homemaker. Okay. By him doing what he was doing as provider and protector, it allowed me to do what I'm really, really good at. Okay. To stand in my beautiful feminine role. And so was that, okay, a matter of my character, or was it the gender role that I was expected to fulfill? Or was it simply that I understood the strength of what it means to be a woman that does what she does really, really well? And even in my current relationship, I will tell you, I am teaching my guy how to be the man of the household, because I respect him in that role. Okay. And what is he doing? Because he's in that beautiful role of his, that strong masculine area, it is allowing me to feel supported in the roles that I love to do, which is caretaker, homemaker, nurturer. And so I would present this back to you as a man. Okay. What does it mean for you? And I might have gotten off track here because I get so passionate about this subject. So bring me back around if I did. But what does it mean to you as I'm just going to go ahead and say it, a white man? Okay. You're a veteran. You've been a dad, you have been a husband. What does it mean to you when a woman that you care about, or females that you care about, come to you and say, hey, Steve, or hey, dad, or hey, partner, whatever roles those are, I could really use your counsel right now. I don't necessarily want you to fix the problem. Just, I could use your counsel. What does that do for you as a man?
First of all, thanks for pointing out I'm white. I didn't recognize it.
I know. Hey, but our listeners can't see us because we haven't moved to video. Y'all know I have tried to get us to video. I'm going to up his game.
We're going to get there, and as soon as I look more handsomer, I'll get there.
Steve.
So, when you bring up a valid point, because I have had a growth period in my own life. And it stems from role modeling. Okay. My father, my mother chose not to work. And it's unfortunate because my dad was put into a role of working 2 different jobs. The first one was him working in the military, 7 to 4, working as a security police officer that was training guard dogs. And then he would come home, eat, change clothes, and he was a self-made mechanic because he was a farm boy out in West Texas. And so he knew how to work on cars. And so he would go and do this on a half a day Saturday. I remember asking to throw ball and wanted to play baseball. And instead of throwing catch with me, he bought a pitchback where you throw the ball and bounces and I catch it on my own. And so it didn't help me to get into the masculine role, so to speak, being there. So I'm not faulting my parents whatsoever. I'm just saying these are the dynamics of what shaped me as a man. And when I got into relationships, I was blinded by learning it all on my own, because I didn't have a good role models to look at how to have a healthy relationship. I was taught that when somebody was angry, you shut down, you don't talk about it. So it becomes a silent treatment, becomes abusive. I never saw my dad hit my mom. I did see him punch holes in the wall through his anger. And so as men, we see this because we're trained to learn one emotion, and that's anger. You're not supposed to talk about it, your emotions. You're supposed to shake it off, grow up, be a man, and push through. And so it creates this different dynamic. And so as I grew in my relationships, I did get into a toxic relationship. And she was, when you have a borderline personality disorder and histrionic, it doesn't help the situation in that manner. And what do you do as a husband? You try to nurture, you try to do what you have to do. Now let's
you're trying to fix it. You're trying to resolve the issues because inherently this is what men do. They see an issue with someone that they care about and then they try to fix it.
And that's just the compartmentalization of a man. We have these different shoe boxes, and we have this do nothing box, and it drives women crazy of how can you sit here and think about nothing? I'm sorry, I have a do nothing box. There's nothing there. And women's brains are like spaghetti. You're always touching every noodle in its place, and you don't know how to turn off the noodles. And so it drives a man crazy too, because he likes to sit and not think about anything.
In fact, I think it's necessary for men to be able to have that space where it is nothing. It is nothing.
True.
And it's hard for women to believe that is an actual thing. It is an absolutely, ladies, it is an absolutely thing. Men need that space of nothingness, and it really exists. So,
and I appreciate that, because I was always chased in my relationship to talk. And it only put me into a state of anger because I couldn't get away. They was chasing. I had my son on my hip and she was constantly chasing me. And I'm like, I need you to leave me alone. I have it. Go back to bed. I've got this. And so it was a challenging moment for me to be able to have some space, but we have to respect one another to be able to say, if that someone needs space, to give them space. So going back to our roles, and we get about 30 seconds left, and it's like, holy cow, we went through this like crazy. I'm sorry to our audience that we kind of bounced a little bit, but we do need to wrap it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to do part 2 of discussion, because this is not a topic that we can do within 30 minutes or less. This is going to be an ongoing topic. So please work with us, be with us, and listening to this podcast as we grow into what does a relationship look like in the end? What does a healthy relationship look like for two people? Notice I said people, and I didn't give them an identity. I said two people. So with that being said, our time is up, and we're going to carry on part 2. Julie, as always, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch up next time.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope to have you back next week. Until then, be safe and be kind.